Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today with me is Garret Flower, the CEO of Wayleadr. So, Garret, can you tell us first about what Wayleadr does, and then we'll talk about the report that you commissioned?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Gab. So Wayleadr is an arrival SaaS technology. Our mission at Wayleadr is to make arriving easier than leaving. And so we believe that when you look at arriving anywhere, there's a lot of guesswork that currently takes place. And our job is to solve that guesswork and to help save people time, help businesses save costs by reducing the need for unnecessary space, and to also help them generate additional revenue from using this insight to drive new revenue to underutilized space. So Wayleadr is a SaaS platform that believes that space can be used a lot better than the way it is used today. And we're working with companies around the world across 25 countries today and solving this arrival problem.
Okay, and tell me a little bit more about the report that you commissioned.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, and as I'm sure you're aware, the world has changed quite significantly since COVID. And we wanted to roll out this arrival report to really talk into the big issues that are currently present in the market that I don't think many people have as much detail into. One of the first key findings is that, across 100,000 spaces that we surveyed, only 1% is currently set up for EV charging capability. And, when you look at last year, the fact that 11% of vehicles purchased were EV vehicles, this leaves an interesting dynamic that's going to occur where we're going to have to, A, get really efficient at using these EV charging spaces, or B, we're going to have to invest a lot more in EV infrastructure, which I think is really interesting.
Okay, and one of the parts of the report that I wanted to focus on, in the occupancy report, you said that you found that the office occupancy increased by only 4% from 2021 to 2022. That seems very surprising to me. It would seem that, with the pandemic mostly winding down by the end of 2022, it would have increased by a lot more. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you think that number is so surprisingly low?
Yeah, and I think this is the interesting point, is that you have a lot of companies now across the world, and we have an interesting perspective in that we're across 25 countries. And what you see is that companies are making a decision to be way more flexible now in creating anchor days like a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday as everyone's in the office, but embracing the flexibility and saying Mondays and Fridays, it's okay to work from home. So before you had this uncertainty and people were coming and going with no real policy, now you have companies who are very much embracing a policy of, we want to see you in on a Wednesday, we'll see you on Wednesday, but the rest of the week is fine. And so therefore, you have this leveling off where some companies are actually seeing decreasing occupancy across an entire week, but focused occupancy and full occupancy on certain days. So it's interesting dynamic to get your head around. So in the total week, the change hasn't been dramatic, but on certain days, it's been dramatic, decreasing and increasing, with Mondays and Fridays being a massive decrease on the weekend, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday seeing much of an uplift. So overall, the percentage is only a small percentage, but the dynamic and shifting of days and occupancy per day is really something. In saying that as well, coming into 2023, we've seen a significant increase on that again, a double-digit increase in return to office. You may have seen some big announcements recently for well-known companies returning to the office. And I think I was in California the last 3 weeks, and I see a major trend of more companies going back to the office in more significant allocations of time. So not just the 1 day a week, but more 3 and 5 days a week, encouraging that policy. So I think the trend has been consistently up. Now we have more assurance on set flexible days and policies of that companies have chosen into, and you're going to start seeing, I think, a push towards return to office to increase even more. So another dynamic we've seen is companies that are affected by maybe the recent downturn in the macroeconomy are using the return to office as a way to encourage how they're going to improve performance, getting back to old ways. And so you're seeing also a trend where companies that are maybe affected at different stages in the stock market are now using the return to office as a tool to bring people back. When people are coming back, they want to use arrival technology to make it seamless. So companies are really embracing Wayleadr as a way to encourage return to office in a flexible, engaging way, so that people don't have to worry about parking, worrying about booking a table, a desk, etc., worrying about access into the building, or that there's not enough space when they arrive. So Wayleadr solves for all of those problems, and that's why we're growing faster than ever right now, as a way to help alleviate the stresses and pains for people coming back to the office.
Well, it's interesting what you're talking about, the companies that are in financial challenge, because when we've seen companies be in significant financial challenge, so for example, Twitter, Elon Musk at first said everyone comes back to the office. He's a well-known radical proponent of Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 in the office. But then he closed down the Seattle headquarters of Twitter. He closed down the Singapore headquarters of Twitter. He closed down a number of New York offices and told his staff to work fully remotely because they can be very well productive while working at home. So we're seeing some companies that are, and that's just an example of a number of companies that are doing the same thing, that are Amazon and so on. Even though it told its staff to come to the office, it's still pausing construction on a number of headquarters, like its second headquarters. It's not built, looks like it's not going to build it out, at least for a long time, letting go of a number of office buildings. What do you make of that? It seems like a number of companies are actually choosing to send people back home because they're seeing that people can be very productive working from home and they don't have to spend the money on real estate.
It's a great point, and we could discuss it at length. And I think one of the interesting things is that he's an interesting character who I admire the achievements of, and he has multiple companies that are of different policies, right? So I think what we're seeing is that he's obviously a leadership have decided that for one of his businesses, for Twitter, that maybe they can get some of this work done from remote. It's also an interesting use case, I think, because that's a recent acquisition, and I'm sure there was policies in place beforehand that may have been more flexible or remote. So I think it's an interesting use case. I think in his other businesses, it's more of a full-time back to the office approach, which has been the approach historically as well, right? So I think leadership across the world are going to embrace what they think is right for their business. And at the end of the day, we've seen now that remote can be possible, that flexible is possible. And I don't think you're going to see companies totally, every single company abandon flexible policies. So I think over the next 2 or 3 years, leadership will see the information and evidence of what's being produced by their teams and decide for themselves, is remote something that they want to embrace or not, because it doesn't work for everybody. And I think you're starting to see that come into effect.
Okay. Yes, I'll be curious to see specifically, because I think compared to his other companies, Twitter has more financial strain. So as companies undergo more financial strain, it'll be interesting to see what happens with their remote work policies when they realize people can be doing work remotely and be productive, and they can save money on the office. So that's one thing that I think is important to note. The other thing I wanted to get back to was the occupancy by day of week. So I helped 22 companies transition to figuring out their long-term hybrid work and remote work arrangements. And you and I were just talking how I was visiting California just before our conversation here today. I was visiting one of my clients and talking about their hybrid work, remote work arrangements. And one of the things that they're finding is that when people are coming into the office, they're not coming in for a full day. So they're coming in maybe for the morning and the afternoon, and they're leaving before the evening rush hour, or they're skipping the morning rush hour, and they're coming in the afternoon and leaving after the evening rush hour. So separately from the day of occupancy, then they're coming. Maybe they're coming on Wednesday or on Tuesday or on Thursday, or maybe they're all free. But what time of day do you see people coming, and how does the more flexible timing of people coming in and leaving change their arrival?
So that's really interesting. So one of the benefits of Wayleadr as a platform is we show this utilization insight to companies. And so what we've been able to do is save six-figure returns for these companies by showing them, let's say Wednesday is your busiest day, and Wednesday is what we're seeing is the busiest day. We have some companies that have seen this utilization data, and they're seeing the majority of people are coming in between 8 to 1, right? And so 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock is this peak period where people are coming in, getting their work done, maybe having lunch with their colleagues, and getting out before the evening traffic or the afternoon traffic. And this is really interesting to see, because you could have peaks as high as 95, 100% full occupancy of people showing up, but then they leave before the afternoon rush. And so this has allowed companies to save, for example, on catering or shuttle buses that are out there and not being used in the evening anymore, or other services that they're using and they have previously had a fixed process and plan in place, are now looking at this data and saying, why do we need to have so much food out for dinner if not as many people are staying at 5 o'clock? And that's really valuable information to get from in advance at companies like these, because they can save a fortune from having this insight. So people are choosing to move differently. I think what we're really seeing is this urge from everybody to get back to meeting in person. But at the same time, there's a pull to hold on to flexibility that people also desire. And we see some companies where they don't want to give up the flexibility, so they decide never to come into the office. But when you put Wayleadr in place and allow a flexible policy and adopt a flexible approach, we're seeing they are flooding back to the office as long as they can keep flexibility during the week to help drop their kids off at school once a week, or to go and do some errands, have their day-to-day lifestyle pieces which don't affect their work in any way, but allow them to be to live a more normal human week and get their work done and put the ownership back and keep the ownership in their hands for how they manage their week. So allowing flexible policies, like I'm sure you're implementing yourself, gives people more confidence and actually helps them return to the office, if that sounds strange, but it helps them because now they have certainty that they can keep some flexibility, but they don't have to lose it if they go back into the office for a few days of the week.
Yeah, so you referenced people going back to the office. What I find is most beneficial for people going back to the office and figuring that out has to do with minimizing the commute. Now, you found that on average in your report, people spend over 10% of their work time commuting. That's not great, right? It's kind of like an empty waste of time. So what we do with my clients is figure out how can their staff minimize the commute as much as possible, so that they can, when they come to the office, they actually do the things that the office is best for, which is for collaboration, obviously. Individual tasks are best done at home. I don't need to be in the office to write emails or check Slack messages or do video conference calls and distract everyone else while I'm in video conference, or writing reports or doing graphic design. Now, those are individual tasks, and I can very well be doing remotely. So the key is to figure out, okay, which tasks need to be done in the office, which tasks are best done in the office, meaning you don't need to do any tasks in the office. There are some companies that I acknowledge they do their work fully remotely. I think that's not the best thing for most companies. So there are some things that are better done in the office and collaborative tasks. So I wonder, how can Wayleadr be used, or what do you think would be the best use cases in figuring out how can you arrange things so that employees minimize their commute time as much as possible? Because that's what they really appreciate. They appreciate their time not being wasted and being resentful and frustrated about coming to the office and doing things they'd be doing at home. So what are your thoughts about that?
I couldn't agree more. I think 10%, to reiterate, of your commute time is wasted, essentially, if you're stuck doing unproductive hours, right? From an employer's point of view, it's unproductive hours. From a people point of view, you're not getting much benefit out of that time. And so Wayleadr minimizes that by making arriving easier than leaving. And so one example would be, we have many clients who when they're on their way to work, they need to find a parking space, and they drive in and they don't know where the available space is. So we actually show them where the available space is on the app, so they can see there's a space here in this zone, and I can take you straight to that space in the app. And so that, giving people that view on occupancy, where the spaces are available in advance, allows them to take the ownership and decision in their own hands and go to the location first where there's more space. And this saves countless hours of time for people in advance. So I'm driving in to my office in San Francisco, and I see that building A is 90% full. Wayleadr presents me a message, say building A is 90% full, maybe go to building B. And I drive to building B, which is 60% full. I get my space first time. I'm not driving into A and it's full, and then I have to loop around and go to B. Sure. It's smart insights, giving people this information to be able to save time. We also allow people to book a space in advance, so they have a guaranteed space. They know they're getting a space, which eliminates, we know already, about 8 minutes per journey if you know and you have a guaranteed space. So we're big believers in reducing this wasted, unproductive time at Wayleadr. Our goal is to save lifetimes of time. And so we are able to show, we have some companies that save 3.5 days of productivity per day from using Wayleadr. So if you can wrap your head around that, it really becomes a no-brainer for a software to be installed that can have this sort of effect on people's time. And this is another reason people are using us to flexibly return to the office, so that you can actually make it more seamless and less time consuming for them.
Excellent. Well, I think this is a good point to wrap up. I really appreciate your insights, and that was very helpful, and our audience appreciates that as well.
Thanks very much for having me on.
And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. I hope you subscribe to the show wherever you check this out, and please leave a review. It helps others discover the show, and it helps us improve the show. All right, everyone, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. In the meantime, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.